The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
And of course, as usual, I am here in the studio with our in-house analysts who are actually going to trash the big issue of the day. We have Sunday Suwaki and Chibuz Okaido.
It's nice to be here.
Well, welcome. Without taking much of your time, I would like you, Bia, to ensure that you contribute to this program by sending in your comments. Of course, we know that your comments most times have been setting the agenda of the issue of the day. My name is George Agba, your regular host. And of course, the big issue of the day is the local council election in Kaduna State, where some members of the electorate decried the failure of the electronic voting machines during the polls. Commending the exercise, however, that it was well organized in spite of the low voter turnout. They decried the failure of the electronic voter machines during the polls. Well, without wasting much of your time, let's just quickly bring in our correspondent in Kaduna State, Benjamin Isaiah. Benjamin Isaiah is going to tell us the situation there, where it was said that some of the agents and some of the officers operating the machine were unable to operate it because they said they also noticed that some of the machines were tampered with. And some of the polling agents, unit agents that were trained for the election exercise were changed overnight. And those assigned to do the job could not operate the machine properly. Hence, this very big challenge. Well, before we continue, our correspondent in Kaduna, I think our bureau chief in Kaduna, Benjamin Isaiah, is live with us. And of course, he's going to tell us the situation in Kaduna during the local government polls. Benjamin, you're welcome to this show. It's like he's not up here. Before we get Benjamin again, sure. You remember that INEC going to the National Assembly.
Hello, can you hear me?
Boasted that they have the capacity to conduct the 2023 polls through electronic voting. Now, the challenge that just happened in the last local government election in Kaduna, do you think INEC can actually address these challenges before 2023?
What happened in Kaduna, it was not actually a serious challenge because people were able to vote. And if you look at the time limit where these officers need to be trained and all that, so you can understand the kind of challenges that they have. But I can assure you that the people actually see that there is some kind of credibility in the election if electronic voting should be adopted in the general election. Because some people say that most of the results that were declared, they actually, reflect the yearnings of the people. Because we see situation where some serving local government chairmen lost out, and where other political parties who people think they are not strong, they were able to win election in those areas. And we see in some local government where you will see a political party having more councillorship than another political party that won the chairmanship. So you see that it's a grassroots election. People went for people they know that can be able to deliver. And the electronic voting actually reflects their yearnings. But going forward, I think electronic transmission of result is very important because most of the time the voting is not actually the problem, but transmitting this the vote to where the server is, where people can actually see what they voted and all that is always the problem. Because writing election result through pen and paper is actually tempting. That is where manipulation comes in. But with the Kaduna experience, I think if more election can be done electronically and result transmitted electronically, I think it will help.
But listen to what you are just saying. That it is only when you are using biro to pen down the results. That is where temptation comes. But don't forget that machines too is not machines that give you exactly the figure. Machine is operated by human beings, and it is just like computer, garbage in, garbage. It is what they give the machine that the machine comes out. So what makes it who things that there will be no temptation in using the electronic voting machine.
Well, first of all, let me commend the Kaduna State Governor, for taking this bold step. This is the second time he's doing this since he assumed office. The first time he did it was in 2018,
18, of course.
and now we are having him doing this again.
I think when it comes to electronic voting,
Yes.
he actually blazing the trail.
Absolutely, and I think he has to be commended for taking the bold step to do that. Whether or not we had some of these hitches, as was pointed out, it's expected. These are technical things.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it is a very bad mark. Absolutely not. Now, like the point you raised an issue of what you garbage in is what you garbage out. Of course, definitely there will be human elements. Human elements will always be there. But I think the focus for why people insist on having, electronic voting and electronic transmission of results is to reduce the margin of error. It is enough to say people are going to compromise the system.
Well, sorry to cut you short. I think we now. That's it. Benjamin Isaiah, you're welcome to this program.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yes, we are thinking of the last local government election in Kaduna last Saturday, where most of the electorate are alleging that the electronic machines were malfunctioning. They also noticed that some of the machines were tampered with. Some of the polling unit agents that were trained for the elections were changed overnight. And those assigned to do the job could not operate the machines properly. What was actually the situation, Benjamin?
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
We can hear you. Go on.
Hello, can you hear me loud and clear?
We
So
can
we
hear
can
you
hear
now.
you. Go
We
ahead.
can hear you now. We can hear you.
Okay, very well. Now, the election of okay, fine, thank you. The election of last Saturday actually came with its challenges here and there, but again, let me put on record that this is not the very first time that the Kaduna State is voting electronically. It was test run in 2018. It had quite a number of challenges, but for this 2021 local government election, we're made to understand that the machine was improved upon, and at least I can attest to that fact. Again, it also came with own challenges again, because in quite a number of areas, it didn't work as expected, while in some other areas, it worked very perfectly. So, but again, it also came with a number of challenges here and there. Now, some of the challenges that was witnessed was the fact that most of the people that were trained to man the machine were changed at the last time. We don't know for what reasons. Now, but aside that, relatively one can say that the election was free and fair to some extent. I, for one, aside monitoring the election within Kaduna Metropolis, I equally took time to go and vote personally, so that I can also tell how the machine works. And it's one machine that within 15 seconds or thereabout, you would have casted your election and gone. Now, the machine itself, is very flexible. The usage is similar, but of course, you cannot vouch for politicians 100%. So some of the other things that actually happened during the election is the fact that Now, the voting materials actually arrived venues, the polling units pretty late. In some polling units, you discover that the election actually started at about 1. In some areas, 12, while in some few other areas, it started as early as 9 o'clock. What the truth of the matter is that this machine is really a welcome development, and just like the politics editor did say, we must give it to the governor. He has done pretty well. It makes it much more easier. It takes away quite a number of challenges like multiple voting and all of that. With what has happened and with what we saw, and with what I personally witnessed and participated, because I also voted, it's very difficult for multiple voting to occur. Now, because first and foremost, before the election itself proper starts, I mean, the machine will be opened up and you will see that there is nothing inside it. Because once you vote, it prints in. It's just like ATM, all right, when you pay in your money or you give them your ATM card, all right, it gives you a slip. So once you vote, a printout goes into the bus. Now, two things happens eventually. At the end of the day, the printout will be collected. A summary of votes will also be printed out. And as soon as you vote, your vote is sent to a central server at the SICOM office. So it becomes very difficult for the results to be tampered with. Again, like I said, this is what is expected to happen. But whether or not is what happened in all of the elections, in all of the local government, I cannot say for one. But for the usage of the machine, I can say emphatically that it's a very welcome development. It makes things much more easier. All right. Multiple voting is taken away because it recognizes only your voter's card. And once you have voted, you cannot use it in any other place again. All right, so I think it's a welcome development. I think if, as a country, we kind of borrow a leaf from Kaduna State in the coming election, I think it was a lot of good. Again, like I said, there are a lot of challenges, some few challenges that was associated with the usage. In the areas where it didn't work, because I personally had to go to SICOM to find out that why is it that the machine malfunctioned in some areas, and I was made to understand that you see, is the period that the machines arrived the country. Now, those that worked on it, those that had to work on the machine, they had to work day in, day out. They were working 24 hours. And as human, there's a tendency that there could be one or two challenges or mistakes while they were trying to format the machines accordingly. But believing me honestly, by and large, the election of the Saturday local government election in the 19 local governments where it held, and the areas where I personally covered, I can confirm that it was a free election in the areas where I covered. Now, another thing that also was witnessed is the fact that there was no violence whatsoever, so to say. Of course, there are cases here and there where they were reported snatching of the electronic voting machine. But the truth of the matter is that whether you snatch it or not, there's little you can do about it. That is what we were made to understand when the machine was test run at the SICOM office. Now, like I said, the machine itself, from the beginning of the vote, the first printout is expected to come out with 0-0. Now, meaning to say that if the political agents are not compromised and they know at the end of the day that it is that cannot be tampered with. Don't forget, like I said, the results are also transmitted to a central server at CATSICOM office. Now, and at the central server, the results are there. So, and whatever you are bringing from the polling unit to the ward, from the local government, to when it will be officially announced by the CATSICOM, everything must tally. Now, where there are discrepancies, then it means that something is wrong somewhere. So it's possible for us to do check and balances and ensure that this election is free and fair. But like I said, the election itself, everything that happened was to the best of my knowledge and within the areas which I covered.
Okay, thank you very much, Isaiah Benjamin, Bureau Chief of Leadership Newspapers, Kaduna State. Because Isaiah Benjamin has just given us an insight into what happened. Of course, he's insisting that the election was free and fair.
That was exactly the
Because
point.
there are some areas where the machines malfunction. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't take that for granted because when you are talking of one local election in just one state. It's a nationwide election. By the time you count how many local government or areas polling units that this machine malfunction, it is allowing the same thing to happen during the general election. It could affect the election. But INEC told us before the National Assembly that they have the capacity. I was asking you, Isua,
Yeah.
how can they be able to address this kind of challenges, to solve this kind of challenges before 2023?
Well, it's about using other off-season election to test run,
That's wrong.
whatever machine they have, because this one is a state election, and the state may not pull out the kind of resources the federal government will pull out to conduct election. And again, from the analysis of Isaiah, since people were saying that the voting went well and it gives the people some kind of hope of credibility, what needs to be done is that INEC should make sure they train their personnel and ensure that the configuration of the electronic voting and electronic transmission of result is done properly, because they say that in some places where the configuration was not done properly, that is where they had some kind of hitches. Yes, but definitely technology is helping every aspect of the society, and in election I believe that if Nigeria embrace technology, more people, it will reduce voter apathy. More people will want to go and vote. And at the end of the day, we'll get to some level where you can stay in your room and vote in an election and see your result.
Well, although Isaiah said the election was free and fair, was low turnout of voters.
Yes.
Chibuzo, what do you have to say in this regard? Low turnout of voters in the election.
Low turnout.
Perhaps they could be afraid that they might also, most times these are locals. We're talking of local council elections.
No, yeah, but that's
And when they hear electronic voting machine, do you know there are some local people in typical village that are afraid of anything machine?
No, it is that some people have already believed that election in Nigeria is determined by the electoral body, not the people. Some people believe that even if they vote, their vote will not count. But now that they are hearing stories of electronic voting and it's reflecting what the people voted, I think it will encourage others to embrace electronic voting and embrace election, because Nigeria is spending money in conducting election, but at the end of the day, few people only go out to vote. So there is so much voters apathy, and the only thing that will make people to accept election or to go out to vote is that if they are assured that what they voted will be announced.
Well, we will actually take a short break before we come back. But before we go, I will still plead that our viewer, you send us your comments, at least, so that we'll know your opinion and your views out there as it relates to the issue, the big issue of the day. Don't go offline. Don't turn your dial. We will be back in a moment. back. This is Leadership Podcast. And of course, it is a big issue. And of course, the big issue of the day is the malfunctioning of electronic voting machines in Saturday's local government election in Kaduna State. Well, people good at say machines are created by humans, so they are subject to failure at times. So apart from failure of the machine, the electorate in the state lamented us that some of the machines were tampered with. Who tampered with these machines? What did it take? What would you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, I think there will be need for investigation to ascertain who tampered with the machines. That is one. Two, who will do the investigation? That's another thing. But I do think that rather than look at the negatives of what has just happened, we should, build on the positives. Because in actual sense, in this time, the technology we are talking about here is almost ancient technology, if you will. In other climes now, they're not just building on, this is like a foundation. They've gone maybe
Far
2 or 3
beyond.
steps ahead of this. So, as much as we commend, the Kaduna State Governor for taking this bold step, it is also important to underscore that we ought to have gone past where we are at the moment. However, it is still, say, like they say in some places, where you wake up is your morning. So this is our morning, and it's only important that we make the best of our morning. So going forward, I think there are a couple of things I was able to pick from what Isaiah Benjamin point, the analysis he gave, a very brilliant one at that, insightful and also instructive. First of all, I think there will be need for a lot more enlightenment. It cannot be underscored enough. There's a need for a lot of enlightenment. Our internet, our technology projection and usage perhaps is still not as it ought to be. This is a basic technology in any case, so it's not a complicated process. However, there's still need for a lot of enlightenment. You know, that is one. Then two, the human component of this, the training for those that will operate it, is also very, very key. There has to be a lot of, training and retraining and tutoring, on how, they should handle it. Also, there will be need for, proper, perhaps storage and early processing and configuration of these things. They have to be configured, perhaps way longer or earlier than they ought to be used. So it helps to curtail some of the challenges we face. But looking at the positives too, like he did point out, it helped with reducing the level of violence that could have happened. Also it helps to reduce multiple voting, like he also pointed out. And I think these are things that help for voter confidence, which is at the heart of any credible elections. If there is no voter confidence, if there is no sense of people going to the vote and having a sense that if I cast my vote, it will count, you know, it helps to boost. No, if that sense is not there, it chops away at the credibility of elections, and that has always been the problem we have faced in the country today. And I think this one pointed out the concern of apathy. So when there's no voter confidence, apathy steps in and it occupies that space. So I think we should build on the positives from this process, build on the things that gave the process a lot more credibility, and if can only build on that, I think the sky is always the limit. But again, the political will, as displayed by the governor, cannot be brushed aside. I think it's at the core.
So it's commendable.
It's at the core of all we have seen so far.
It's commendable.
You might not like his politics, but that sense of political will and a desire to get things done cannot
Properly.
be overemphasized. And I think it's basic today. So I think if the federal government displays this kind of political will, See, nobody's looking for a perfect election. There are no perfect elections
Anywhere,
anywhere. Of
yeah.
course. It's not possible to have perfect. It's almost impossible to have perfect elections. But people want to have a sense of a drive and a desire to do things the way they ought to be done. So if people see that and sufficiently enough, and I think we'll be almost home and dry.
Well, Chibuzo, you spoke very well, and of course, I think you were talking of the positive here. You see, no doubt, there are a lot of takeaways that are positive from the Kaduna election. But you see, why we are concentrating on the negative is to analyze and scrutinize each other, get it right. And of course, despite the fact that there's so many positives that the negative, the pros that they come. The cons, as small as they are, they need to be addressed. You know why?
Absolutely.
They say machines were tampered. That is one thing that should not be rolled out. And then, if we allow that go, that means in 2023, why do people are busy learning the positives, the pros, and then we will not tell our viewers and other state governments and the INEC at the national level to take a cue from Kaduna State. At the same time, there are the bad eggs in the country, they're everywhere, that want to take a cue from the bad side, the negatives of that election.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you. But that is where the composition of the electoral body comes into question. You know, in other climes, there's a different pattern through which the makeup of the electoral commission, emerge. Don't forget, this is a state-run thing. There's always been complaints about how states do their thing. When the chairman, whichever party is in power, they almost get 100% turnover on the election day. And because the governor, how influential governors can be when it comes to state elections. Exactly. And to some extent, that has played out in Nigeria too until 2015 elections. And that's why people have canvassed severally. There have been recommendations and talks about this, that the process through which the INEC chairman emerges should be independent of the presidency. There should be
the federal government,
exactly,
or at the state level.
exactly,
the state government.
and the same thing applies to the IG of police and some other. In some clans, they even vote for these offices. So it is important that perhaps it might be time to visit all that again, because the tampering of the system comes down to this to some extent. The degree to which whoever appoints you there, will determine whether there's transparency in the way those things are managed. But that said, well, I still don't think it comes down to, and it is difficult to legislate on this anyway. It comes down to individual. There's a need for people to own the process. It should come from a place of, this is a service I have to do for my people, knowing that the decision I take or decision I make in my capacity as either INEC chairman or supervisor or whatever has a ripple effect on how the next leadership emerges, and how that leadership performs has a ripple effect on how it comes back to me. So with that kind of mindset, it helps to make the process a bit more transparent. However, like I said, we don't legislate human behavior in that direction. It's a personal and individual thing. But however, there should be checks and balances to ensure that we have that.
The process. Well, it's so wait. Let's look at this type of thing. You see, first of all, what I want to do is to put you on a pedestal that you understand what we are analyzing here. And what we are scrutinizing is that these alarm rays were not raised by outsiders, people outside the state. The electorate in the state that were spoken to were the ones who heard the frustration, lamented the malfunctioning of the machine, alleging that the machines were tampered with, and they up to the extent that they said the officers that were trained for the election exercise were changed overnight, and those that were now assigned to the job would not operate the machines properly. You understand? So, who changed the officers that were supposed to operate it? For what reason?
That is why we have to pressure President Muhammadu Buhari to sign this Electoral Offences Commission bill that have been passed by the National Assembly and transmitted to him.
True.
Now, if people that committed this offense by manipulating the machine, if they know that they will go to 15-year jail, because the bill provides that any electoral officer that manipulated the process, there are terms there, and it's not less than 15 years jail term. So if people know that if they manipulate even a local government election, they will be punished, they won't try that again. So you can see
to serve as
a deterrent, yes, to others. So we have to, pressure President Muhammadu Buhari to sign this electoral offences commission bill, so that if this commission is in place, they will work like the EFCC. The EFCC is a federal body, but it works both in the local government, in the state, and in the federal. And that's how that electoral offences commission will work. And they will not have they will work independently, and it will make people to sit up and do the right thing. And I hope this will help the process.
Let's don't forget that one of the major reasons why the Electoral Act, the bill, was being challenged, CSOs and the rest, was because they said the provision for electronic transmission of results was like expunged. They were attempts to expunge it. Now, if machines malfunction, good, that is normal. If they begin to change the officers that are supposed to operate these machines, then how do you think the electronic transmission of results could actually aid transparency? Don't you think they can even manipulate the process of that transmission of that result, and then the machine will begin to transmit something different?
Well,
If they are capable of changing officers that are supposed to operate machines and then bring the ones that were not able to operate this machine.
changing the officers was purely the work of the SECOM, the Electoral Commission in the state. Yes, and if the Electoral Commission in the state knows that Electoral Offences Commission from the federal will deal with them, they will not try that. Yes, so manipulating the process is one thing. Ensuring that we have strong institutions to punish offenders is another thing. So the Electoral Act that is undergoing legislation, need to spell clearly where and how electronic voting should be conducted. But this Electoral Offences Commission, work have been done on it. It's just for the president to sign it into law so that they will start their own work.
Well, of course, you've heard it there. The Electoral Offences Commission could help in curbing most of these malpractices, because at the end of the day, they would have jumped into action to actually probe the reason behind the change of officers operating machines, and then bringing the ones that are unable to operate machines. But well, be it as it may, the Kaduna local government election was a success story, given the political will of the governor to conduct election electronically and achieving a higher level of success. We could give kudos to him. And of course, it's not everything that is bad that will not happen. I think the Kaduna election, I agree with you, was a good success. Well, that's the much we can take for the big issue of today. And of course, I will say a big thank you to our in-house analyst, Sunday Isua.
Thank you very much.
Chibuzo.
Thank you so
It
much.
was a great job. And of course, I hope you had a wonderful time listening to us out there. And we will say you join us next same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. My name is George Agba. Have a very wonderful weekend. It's bye for now.